Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Daniel Williams, and I'm the community manager at Blockstream. And today we have Blockstream VP of Product, Alan Piscitello. He's here to talk about stablecoins and Liquid. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the public chat here, and we'll make sure to have those answered. So thanks for coming. And Alan, if you want to start, go for it.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. So again, my name is Alan Piscitello. I'm the Vice President of Product at Blockstream. I've been at Blockstream for a little over 2 years. So focusing mostly on Liquid. So we're really excited to see the growth in Liquid and getting and preparing for that next bull market. Now we think really Liquid and stablecoins on Liquid will be the key piece of being able to service the demand that's going to happen during those exciting times in Bitcoin, and getting ready for hopefully that starts off in 2020. So we're going to cover just kind of a case study of what kind of things happen during a bull market and how that affects exchanges. We're going to talk about the role of stablecoins, and then I'm going to compare a couple of different chains that are commonly used for stablecoins. And before we get into that, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction of Liquid. I don't know how many people here are familiar with Liquid, but just kind of give you a basic overview of how it works. And so Liquid is a side chain of Bitcoin. And what that means is you can move Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network into the Liquid network, and it has different properties. So these different properties are mainly focused around things that are beneficial for trading. So things like having private transfers of assets. So when I send a Liquid Bitcoin, I am not necessarily revealing how much of that asset is being sent to any destination. This is really helpful for trading applications so that no one can front run you. So you see a lot of Twitter accounts or different types of ways watching exchanges for deposits. And while your deposit is getting credited, while you're waiting for confirmations, other people can take advantage of that information and trade against that position to your disadvantage. So having privacy on Liquid is very important. The other main feature that it does have as well is having a very quick and reliable block time. So because Liquid's a federated sidechain, you're getting transfers that happen in 1 minute with blocks, and transaction finality in 2 minutes. Compare that to something like Bitcoin, where you have transactions that occur every 10 minutes on average, but sometimes can happen even less frequently. So you could have a block that could take an hour in Bitcoin. And when you're trading, that's something that's really important. You're not able to actually benefit from trading when your money is in transit. We'll talk about that in some of these slides up here. All right. So kind of just the goals of an exchange and why this benefits you. I think this is really important to kind of cover. So the idea is an exchange, really what they're caring about is getting a lot of traders to trade very frequently. So the more volume that they have, the more trading fees they can collect. And how do they do that? So really, if you're providing the best price for buyers, that's going to attract a lot of people trying to buy a crypto asset. So that's very helpful. But you also want to have the highest price for sellers. So those are kind of sometimes two competing goals. But really what this means is you're going to have tight spreads between the bids and asks and have a high amount of liquidity. So if someone wants to buy, say, $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, that's not going to necessarily move the price very much if you have a lot of liquidity, or even if you're trying to buy multi-million dollars worth of Bitcoin. The more that price moves, the more slippage there is, the less likely someone is to execute that trade on your exchange. So again, attracting liquidity and having those tight spreads are the key to their overall goal of having high trading fees that lets more assets be traded more frequently. And what this means is a key component here is the exchanges need to replenish inventory when it gets depleted. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But market makers in general and other traders oftentimes provide this inventory for buyers of these assets or sellers. They provide the cash inventory for buying when someone's selling, so that the markets can be made and can stay tight and keep this liquidity. And when those market makers run out of funds due to an influx of buyers or sellers, that they're able to quickly replenish that, either buying up the asset on another exchange or going and selling it on another exchange and bringing cash to the table. An important rule here is no one's making any money when all those funds are in transit. So reducing that transit time between sourcing that liquidity and being able to trade it is try to minimize that time is what's going to make a lot more volume. Now, the trader has kind of separate goals, but they a lot of times balance out or even help the exchange meet their goals. So, trader is very simple, right? Buy low, sell high, repeat this process, manage risk, make sure you're not exposed to too much risk. So this is what they're going to do. Traders are going to want to keep an inventory available to meet market demand, and so they want to do this by buying it through a spread. They'll buy a little bit lower and sell a little bit higher, and this is done a couple of ways. Either they're on a specific exchange, by having a spread there, or by moving, arbitraging between different venues. So if they run out of inventory on one exchange, they're going to want to replenish that by buying it up on another exchange and moving it over. So the volatility is good. That's what they can make their money on. But you also can get burned by volatility if you're stuck in a position when the market moves and it's not the position you want to be in. Again, they're not making any money when the money's in transit. So reducing that transit time is the key feature for trading. All right. So kind of one other interesting point I'd like to bring up is just the idea of stablecoins is you're simplifying the process of transferring assets around. Normally, if you have something like a US dollar or euro or something like that, it's deposited in a bank account, and being able to move that around is cumbersome and slow. And so the stable coins represent kind of a faster way to move it and a more open way to move these assets. And this is very similar to how liquid Bitcoin works. Liquid Bitcoin is just a different representation that can be redeemed for the underlying assets. I had a lot of people kind of bring up when I first was explaining liquid to them, say, oh, it's basically Tether for Bitcoin. And it's actually a pretty accurate description. The benefits of liquid kind of for Bitcoin are very similar to just the benefits of stablecoins in general. All right, so going into this case study, I'm just kind of looking at a very balanced market right now. You have 3 different exchanges, and we're going to set it up where Exchange A and Exchange B both have very fast transfers through the liquid network. Exchange C is using more traditional means of transferring assets. So it's going to be slow to go in and out of that exchange. And so we're going to see what happens when there's a kind of a disruption to the market. So the first thing we're going to do is, we're going to look at the perspective of one trader that's keeping a balance of funds on all of the exchanges. They're keeping an inventory here. Just they don't know, where the market demand is going to come, and they're just prepared to either buy more Bitcoin with the Tether that they have, or to sell their Bitcoin for Tether based on the market conditions. So looking at the exchange here, you see Exchange B is sitting in the middle here, and all of a sudden there's a buyer that comes in and wants to buy Bitcoin. They believe that the price is going to go to the moon, and they come in and just buy a bunch of market orders, and this is in turn going to deplete the orders of the market maker here and raise the prices on that exchange. So first thing we see here, the trader that's involved here that we're looking at now doesn't have any Bitcoin position on that exchange. He is all Tether, and on the price itself, the bids and the asks on that exchange went up tremendously. So you can see there's a volume increase on that exchange B. But right now, if all of the traders, all the people that are actively market making are all positioned in Tether, there's no more Bitcoin to go into the market, and this means that the exchange B is not going to attract new buyers. All right, so what does the market maker do right here? Well, he needs to go buy some Bitcoin somewhere and bring it on this exchange. And fortunately for him, the other exchanges have a much lower price for that Bitcoin. So this trader is going to go and he's going to send the Bitcoin over to, or first he already has some money there. So he's going to go buy up the Bitcoin. So this is the first thing he can do is just acquire that Bitcoin. This is going to kind of balance out his books, so he's not having volatility risk of being short Bitcoin. He has more Bitcoin now to have, and this actually raises the prices up on exchanges A and C. He's bought up what it is. You have a big spread on those exchanges. The prices are now becoming a little bit more balanced, but still not there. Exchanges are all getting volume. Everything looks good, but now it's time to try to even up your inventories. So because there's a discrepancy, this trader is going to take a position of trying to send all the Bitcoin to the highest priced exchange and all of the Tether to the lowest priced exchange. And at this point, this takes time. And remember, we talked about how this was set up. Moving from exchange A to exchange B is very quick, whereas moving from exchange B to exchange C or vice versa is very slow. And so what we have happen there is the funds from exchange A arrive on B very quickly, along with the stablecoin that's there. And so this now allows the trader to sell that inventory of Bitcoin and drive the price back down, and also acquire more Bitcoin to replace it on exchange A. So he's doing an arbitrage here. So again, this process is happening. You're noticing exchange A and B's volumes are going up while exchange C is kind of stuck here waiting because there's no one is able to get funds to that exchange to buy more of that asset. And again, we're just going to keep repeating this process over and over again. And in this cycle, we're just assuming that someone can do way more cycles on A and B than B and C. This means B and A's volumes are much higher than C. So this is good for the exchange. The trader in this case was able to execute a lot more trades by being able to do this very quickly than he otherwise would have been able to do. Keeps the spreads now tight, has a high pool of liquidity that's shared between all these exchanges. So again, we were able to do this because the assets were able to move very quickly. Now, if you think about a pre-stablecoin world, and this is kind of why stablecoins were created, Bitcoin, even in its form of 10-minute blocks, that's very fast compared to something like a bank transfer. Those are something that's taking minimum of hours and sometimes even longer, multiple days in certain conditions. And that can take a long time to get the funds there. And the market, you have a very fragmented marketplace in that point with very different prices and low liquidity between exchanges. Since most of those dollars were just basically being passed around between exchanges and being traded, it really didn't make any sense to be, doing all these bank transfers when it's really just lock up the funds, hold it in one place, and then just kind of have an IOU pass between different parties that can then redeem them at a later date. So again, we can do that same thing with Bitcoin, that you can get the benefits from stablecoins, going from the kind of unreliable mined blockchain of Bitcoin to a more reliable, regular transfer and faster transfer of liquid Bitcoin. So really the kind of lesson here is, the faster your traders are able to move funds to your exchange, the higher your volumes will be. And again, as a trader, you want to be able to move your funds as fast as possible. So both parties benefit from this type of setup. All right. So again, what role? Why do stablecoins get created? What do they have? It really allows exchanges to replenish their inventory during volatile periods very quickly. This is really the main reason why they were adopted for the most part. You have this setup where you can very quickly arbitrage between exchanges. That's going to add liquidity to each exchange. That's going to add more profit opportunities for each traders. So that's just really the key here. Just the transfer of fiat being so slow, it made that nearly impossible to do, and you ended up with just massive swings of the price and just massive amounts of slippage, and really just that lack of liquidity hurts Bitcoin in general. Stablecoin itself, a lot of these things you could do something like this with a centralized database. There are networks like this today where banks allow 24/7 transfers between accounts to do this, and this does solve some of the problems for a lot of the OTC market. But then again, there still is a lot of friction. You have to set up an account with a bank to do this. You have to add a bunch of hooks into software to each of these proprietary systems. And what did you need to do to transfer between if different bank networks existed? These are all things that add friction. So a stablecoin is very nice because it's built on top of the infrastructure that already exists for cryptocurrencies. We'll talk a little bit more about the different rails and networks that have been used for doing this. But the main idea here is, you don't need to open an account. You don't need to do anything special to be able to start using these stablecoins. All you need is a wallet, or even in the case of exchanges, the exchanges just need to support things that they've already supported. And so that's something why people aren't just saying, well, just go directly to the bank and just why don't the banking systems just upgrade their systems to be faster? This is something that solves a different problem in a different way. And I think you're going to see even some of these 24/7 banking systems may even start being able to create stable coins so that they can participate in these systems as well, to lower their friction. All right, so when we compare different stable coins, what I'm actually comparing here is the same stable coin, but on a different network. So, as you may know, there are many different stable coins out there. Some of the biggest ones you have are things that are more asset-backed, like Tether USDC. These are some of the big ones you see out there. This is basically representing dollars in a bank account held by some party that is trusted. You also have things that are algorithmic, things like DAI. They have a very different model for backing things up. But what we're going to talk about here, comparing them, not going to say which one's better, which model's better, but representing that asset, which one, what are the different properties you have. So something like Tether, it exists on, I believe, 4 or 5 different blockchains right now. And it's really representing, each one of those represents the same asset in a bank account, but just represented in a different way. So you can think of it as like, you may have $1 that you may have represented through, you may write a check to pay someone, you may give someone a dollar bill, you may give someone a lot of coins. It's all the same dollar, it's just a different transport mechanism of how those things are done. And so we're going to compare those different networks and what you get. So what do you care about when you're using a stablecoin? The first one is speed and reliability. So again, in the arbitrage situation, speed is king. You want to make sure that you can get it there, and you want to also make sure it's reliable. So one, that when you want to send it, you're not going to be running into congestion, or just not going to be running into a case where it just takes a long time to settle due to bad luck. So that's important. Finality is important. So anyone who's accepting these assets needs to be reasonably certain that what they're accepting and crediting to their user is actually final and cannot be reversed. Privacy is also another key component here. If someone can see movement of funds and track what they're being used for, that's going to leak a lot of information that can cost traders money. And the last one is cost. So, if you have to send a bank wire that costs $50 versus if you're doing a stablecoin transfer that's 10 cents, that's really important. You can also have the variability of cost. So something like a public network that's used by a lot of different applications, you're competing with all those applications for movement of it. So we saw price spikes of transaction costs with Bitcoin when during the last bull market. We saw the same thing on Ethereum when there's other prices as well, and so forth. And I also see a question here, so this is a good time to kind of take a break. The question is the user of the stablecoin here an exchange, not normal users using the token as a fiat replacement or alternative? I think you can, I'm focused a lot right on the exchange case, which would mainly affect on traders and, exchanges themselves. The traders themselves are redeeming these in a lot of cases. As a fiat replacement alternative, that is certainly another important part of a stablecoin. And I guess that's one thing I don't have a focus on this presentation, but I guess if I have a little bit of time afterwards, I can dive into that a little bit more of other things, other considerations here. So if I'm using it as a stablecoin, it's just pure payments. That absolutely is another thing that can be used and actually has been used for a lot of stablecoins. And that's also an important consideration comparing the chains. Like, what is the scalability? How much can you actually push through? And I think that's an important feature. And again, apologies. Yeah, I neglected that because I was focusing mostly on the trading cases, but that is an important use case. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to use kind of the three biggest ones we have here as well, just kind of comparing what we have here. So we have Liquid, we have Omni. So Omni was one of the first layers to really support stablecoins. It's what Tether originated as. We can think of it as a meta protocol layer on top of Bitcoin. So in terms of Bitcoin users, they just see what looks like a bunch of random messages being sent on top of it. It doesn't look like a Bitcoin transfer, but they actually are representing information that Omni users would understand what that is. And then you have something like ERC20. This is a token standard for Ethereum that is used for many purposes: stablecoins, ICO tokens, STOs. So it's a very commonly used platform. So when you're talking about sending it on chain with Liquid, you have this where it's settling in 2 minutes. That's something that's really important. So Liquid has 1 minute block times. After one block, you can see it in a transaction. It's possible it can be reversed. It's unlikely, but it is possible just due to the way Liquid's built. But once you see that second confirmation, your transaction is locked in and irreversible. Compare that to Omni. You're having 60 minutes because on average, the recommendation is six confirmations for a Bitcoin transaction. So that's what it would take to reverse that. And Ethereum, they use a 15-second block time and recommended around 25 confirmations to consider it final. Now, the thing is, those are just recommendations for best practices. And really, you're taking on risk. It's a probabilistic risk that those are going to be reversed. So with Liquid, once you get to that 2 minutes, as long as the network is behaving properly, those are not going to be rolled back. So it's just not possible to roll those back. With something like Omni and Ethereum, you can roll those back, and basically through a 51% attack. So with Liquid, because there's known quantities, if you ever see a rollback of more than 2 minutes, you can basically freeze where things are at that time and know something wrong happened. Whereas something like Ethereum or Bitcoin, if there's a chain rollback and it happens, that's just a normal part of operations, and you just have to eat that cost if someone's able to double spend it. There's no way to say there was malice on behalf of anyone. It just could have happened naturally. And so the other thing is kind of what does that cost? So 51% attack on Bitcoin is quite expensive. On Ethereum, it's less expensive, but it's not insignificant. But it is possible. So if you're sending millions of dollars in a transaction, this is something to be cautious of when you're using kind of more mined or blockchains. Typical transaction costs. Right now in Liquid, we're charging the minimum transaction fee is 1 Satoshi per virtual byte. They are bigger transactions, so we're getting in the 15-cent range, but we're going to lower. The Federation is planning an update to the Liquid software, which will actually lower that minimum, and so we'll be very cost competitive with other chains like Omni. So things like Bitcoin during those rushes, those transaction fees can spike quite heavily. Because there's a lot of movement of funds and a lot of competition for that. So by being able to separate a lot of things into Liquid, that's very cost advantageous during those spike periods. There's a lot of room for capacity to offset and is not competing with other applications. So if a popular trading card game gets popular on Ethereum, your transaction fees might go up. Whereas with Liquid, if it's keeping those concerns separate and there's not a lot of use for the gas, then that concern doesn't exist on Liquid that you would have on Ethereum. You have built-in privacy in Liquid; those don't exist on Omni or ERC20. Capacity, again, you have a lot of room for that. One thing I would also like to add, and this kind of goes into Ezekiel's question, what other kind of capacity? Liquid is built on top of, it's forked from the Bitcoin code base. This means we have a lot of functionality from Bitcoin that's available in Liquid. So what we have here is the capability of adding also Lightning support. So this goes into the retail use of stablecoins, the kind of more payment structure. So you can have a Lightning network on top of any stablecoin in Liquid, and that just gives you far more throughput than you'd ever get on a blockchain. So for big chunky exchange transfers, you're probably going to still want to do those on chain for Liquid. For more smaller fiat replacement of buying milk at the grocery store or coffee or something like that, you don't necessarily need to settle on chain every one of those transactions. You can use something like Lightning Network. So this is something that's very powerful. If you're choosing to build a stable coin, doing it on Liquid, being able to verify it. So right now with Liquid, you can run a Liquid node. You can very low cost validate that transaction is valid, that the history is valid, and you receive the coin. For Omni, you're gonna have to run a special Block Explorer, a special wallet that supports Omni. That's a little bit more higher cost. There's not necessarily as much validation effort or maintained code for doing that. For ERC20 tokens, the cost of being able to validate fully an Ethereum blockchain is very high, and that takes a lot of effort to maintain these nodes. And congestion, that's also kind of another issue. How well does it respond to congestion? Again, in Omni, it's on top of Bitcoin. So you're almost competing with every other Bitcoin transaction, and that means you're going to run into congestion very frequently. Same thing with ERC20. We saw this after Tether started adding it. We saw a big amount of congestion in the Ethereum blockchain due to this, whereas something like Liquid can handle that very, very quickly. So I just wanted to also kind of cover how multiple networks would work as well. Again, the same token exists on these different networks, and as an exchange, this is important to keep in mind. You can support both, and we are strongly recommending supporting as many of these changes as possible, simply because it's going to give you an insurance policy if one of these changes starts piling up, getting expensive, getting slow, or just has any kind of other breakages. So you don't have to commit to saying, well, we're only going to support one. You can support as many as you want. And in this case, let's just say you're an exchange and you happen to have a lot of the ERC20 token version of Tether. What you can do in this case is you can send it back to the issuer. The issuer can then burn the token and reissue it on a different network and then send it back to you. So this is a very easy way that they can keep the balance. And again, this burn mechanism, they could keep inventory as well, just so it's balanced out and they don't have to always be burning them or destroying them, but just kind of in large scale adjustment periods, that's something that's needed. So that's basically kind of the lesson here is, if you're an exchange, prepare for that next bull market, have options open so people can get funds to you to buy when you need buyers, and to be able to move funds off of your exchange so that they can go buy on the other exchanges to come back and sell to you during those bull markets. Because that's the key, is you're going to want to have inventory available to sell. And I'm going to go back into the question that was asked. And again, if there's any other questions, now's a good time to drop it in the chat here as well. So just kind of this, in terms of a fiat replacement, yeah, it's absolutely something that a lot of these stable coins are aspiring to do. And again, something like Tether, we are seeing use cases of people who want to pay but don't have or are underbanked. They can't necessarily get a U.S. bank account, but they need to be able to accept payments in U.S. dollars and be able to make those payments. And so that's something where Liquid kind of solves both ends of the spectrum. Blockchains just in general are not good at mass throughput. You're either going to sacrifice how much you can verify what's going on or to get that capacity, or you're just going to have a constrained capacity. And so by having a solid layer 2 solution to build on top of, this is where you can start getting into both big, chunky, unpredictable type payments, so that you will want to settle on chain. So if you're buying, $10 million worth of something, you'll want to probably settle that on chain. You probably won't have payment channels through Lightning to do that. If you're buying small amounts of things, that's something you can do with Lightning as well. So you can kind of hit both ends of the spectrum very easily with a stable coin that's built on top of Liquid. So I think that's an attractive option. If you're a stable coin, you want to have these options open on different chains because they offer different properties to you. You maybe want to have an ERC20 version so that someone can use it as collateral in a some type of credit default swap smart contract. Maybe you want to have it available in liquid so that people can use it as retail payment. You have all these options available to you is important. I see one more question here as well on Lightning. Is there regulatory compliance issues on funds traceability? So this is kind of a murky area of regulation right now. What does it mean to have funds tracing? So Lightning, you can provably show who you're paying, and it just happens to bounce through the network in a different way. We kind of look at this a lot like when I send internet traffic from my computer to some other server, it's going to bounce through a lot of locations, and depending on how that's done, they may not even know where it's going. So I think that's the idea is I'm directly connected to certain people. Maybe I can say I know those people, or maybe they're anonymous, but I know who I'm dealing with on the end party right there. So I think that the regulatory issue is hard to know what's going on here. And I guess the question is added in here: does the asset issuer keep track of who pays who? So that's something also interesting. So if you have a stablecoin in liquid, you can do it a couple of ways. You can do it where it's kind of a free for all. Anyone can transfer the asset, and the issuer has no idea who has it at any point in time. That's one model. That's a similar model to what Tether has. Another model you can have is basically like a co-sign mechanism where the issuer always signs off on any transfer of this. This is kind of like a more restricted stablecoin. In those cases, if you set up something like Lightning Network, because every channel would also have that restriction on it, the issuer does know exactly what's going on at any point in time. So if you have a restricted token, this is technically possible. Building that for Lightning Network with multi-sig is, I think, possible. There's not any unknowns there. It's just a matter of just doing the work to get that in there. So yeah, you can certainly do centrally issuer tracked coins or just pure private coins where they only need to know about it when it's redeemed or issued. So it's kind of the choice of the stablecoin issuer. Just seeing if there's any other questions in there. Hopefully I answered your questions there. If not, I see some typing, so I'm going to give them a chance here. All right. Looks like I answered all the questions. Great. And if you have any questions, email liquid@blockstream.com. We're happy to, if you're an exchange, we're looking to onboard as many to support liquid stablecoins. We have Tether available right now. There's several other ones that will be in the works. Listed Reserve is one company that's working on a Australian dollar stablecoin. So if you're interested in that, talk to us. We can help you get set up. You don't have to be a liquid member to do any of these things. So if you just want to have an additional deposit option, we're happy to help integrate and get that settled. We'd love to have more exchanges as these members as well. And again, if you're a trader, again, docs.blockstream.com, we kind of talk through how you do this on different exchanges, how you can set up a wallet such as Blockstream Green to hold these assets as well. So that's a lot of information there. Again, if you have any other questions, liquid@blockstream.com. We're happy to answer them and look forward to working with you more. Great. And Daniel also has one more thing. He says there's a technical overview under docs.blockstream.com. So yeah, if you want more information about Liquid, that's another good place. All right. And thanks for your time.